Good evening, everybody. We'll have to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to welcome everybody to our first, after our hiatus over winter, our first sort of lecture. And we're very, very pleased to be doing this today. And I just want to thank all of you who come to our lectures and all of you who are members of the ETHS. And if you're not a member, you should become one, which I always try to say. So I'm the President and CEO, Dr. Warren Doctor, and I just wanted to introduce our speaker this evening and tell you about some upcoming events. On March 29th at noon, we have Foxfire, the Book of Appalachian Women by Cami Atherens. I'm butchering that name, I'm sorry. On Wednesday, April 12th, we also have Georgiana Vines and John North talking about newsmakers not covered in the media today. And we also have a genealogy workshop coming up on the 11th of April about historic newspapers online. So we're very, very excited about that. But I'm also very excited tonight about our speaker, whom I've become good friends with. And so I'm going to turn over to him without further ado, Olympic organizer, and sports marketing guru, and now author, Bill Schmidt.
Thank you, Warren. I've got to admit, I've lived in Knoxville 20 years. I didn't know this place existed till this past year when they decided to do a 40th anniversary of the World's Fair. And up until the time and replacement and new leadership, new board members, and with the staff that Warren has, I've got to commend them on the job that they're doing. The word is getting out that Knoxville has a prize, it has a gym, it's right here in downtown, easily accessible, and a variety of programs. And I'm just proud that I can help in some small way. And kudos to your staff, Warren. They do an incredible job. So. I think lecture was the turnoff for most people. As an adjunct professor at the University of Tennessee, a lecture, that sounds like something I really want to go to. But having said that, one of the questions I get all the time, and I'll do some of this, and being such a small group, if you have any questions while we go through this, I'd be happy to answer it. I did display some items in the back. Some of the people are familiar with coal mining, not only in Appalachia, Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, etc. I got these from my twin brother who worked in the mines for about 17 years or 18 years, not labor-wise, but from a safety standpoint. He's a couple hours from his PhD from West Virginia in safety. So if there was ever a place that needs safety regulations, etc., it's in coal mining, just for starters. But there's some things that he lent me, and if you can, at your convenience, look at them. There's a bucket from what the coal miners would take. That's that metal-looking box on the left. Some photos of a variety of mines. The picture in the middle are miners holding a canary cage, and there's the canary cage right there. That's over 100 years old. And if you're not familiar with it, they kept canaries in that cage, and when, as someone said, when the canaries were on the bottom of the cage, you were in dire need of getting out of that mine. I'm not sure how much lead time it gave them, but that's a canary cage. The helmet, the hat there, it doesn't look like it would protect you from much, but again, that's over 100 years old, and as anything else, it's something. And there's a carbine light there. The thing in the back is a Gatorade bottle. Back when I was at Gatorade negotiating contracts, etc., we acquired a facility, a Gatorade producing facility in the middle part of upstate of Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, and it was predominantly coal mine. So they literally, out of a block of coal, fashioned that Gatorade bottle. Ironic as it is. The two items to the right of that, in 1972, the Olympic Games started literally introducing a mascot. And this was the first year that they did it, 1972, and that mascot's name was Waldy, obviously a dachshund. And to the right of that is the Olympic torch from the LA Games. Any of these things you can touch, hold. They've got somebody at the door, so you can run with the torch at least to the front door. The poster on the right is from the World's Fair. It's in some ways, people are surprised that there were even sports at the World's Fair. But as you look down that calendar, and I'm a little bit biased, but even now, 40 years later, I'm going, we did that in Knoxville. And the irony of everything that's on that schedule, we didn't have a dime to pay for it. It had to pay for itself, and that was basically the start of my career in sports marketing. It wasn't even titled sports marketing, it was sports promotions or just sports events. So having said that, Southview was the coal camp that I was born in, and it was a small place, still small. Every time I go home, I look at the house and I get tempted to go on knock on the door. And as I look at the front porch and the front yard, not much of a front yard, but it faces the street, there's a car on jack, on all the wheels off it, a motorcycle, and I'm going, nah, I don't think I'm going into it today. So I have no idea but it was an interesting place to grow up. 2-room school. This row was first grade, this row was second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and the other one was fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, and then he went to the high school. But it was the sign of the times. It was where the immigrants literally came from, at that time, at the turn of the century, a large number of German immigrants. And this is the ship that my dad came over. Ancestry.com is phenomenal if you've not used it. And I'm sure that class that you're going to have will be rewarding and educational, trust me. Someone said, well, why'd you write the book? I had no desire whatsoever to write a book. But while I was going through my life, and people would know parts of it, but not a lot of people knew all of it. It was not like I wanted to share it, but someone who became familiar with the entirety of the life said, you need to tell your story. So I tried to get a ghostwriter. I'm not sure I remember what my grades were in college. I'm sure the professor would be amazed that I've written a book, let alone my high school English teacher. But they said, Bill, no one's going to be able to tell you a story like you. So I proceeded to sit down, and 3 years of writing, about 10 months to publish. It is an exercise. I started this before COVID, so it wasn't as COVID gave me the opportunity to do this, it wasn't that. Now, the Germans had these ships. There were 4 in this group, and they would have first class as well as third class. Well, it got so popular with the immigrants coming to the United States, they did away with first class. They made more money bringing the immigrants in. And then during World War I, when it started, they started putting munitions on these things. And this was located, I think, in 1982 off the coast of Morocco. So they would load in Italy or in the Serbian area and then go through the Gulf and then get to the U.S. and turn around and go back. Similarities are, this was the first ship that had 4 stacks. And we all know the famous 1912 ship that also had 4 stacks. So these very similar, about 1,200 passengers. Southview is the coal town. And if you can see, and if some of you are familiar with coal camps, they literally built the town, they built the store, they paid you in company script, so you could only spend the money in the company store. I can remember as a kid going down with my mother, and I remember her signing a book, but no money was exchanged. So then they weren't getting paid from the company store. So I don't know whether my mother had an agreement with the store, pay on demand at some time when the checks came in or whatever. But this is pretty much what it looked like, and literally all the homes looked identical, outhouses in the back, and people go, you didn't really grow up there, did you? I said, yeah, I did until you were about 6 years old. It was a life experience, and at the time it was either you were either as an immigrant or as a family or son of an immigrant. There were several choices. Coal mine was number 1. Steel mills were number 2. Pittsburgh was 20 miles away. And in the hills of Pittsburgh, Moon Run, etc., they literally came out of the hills into the mines or the steel mills, and that's where they literally worked for 27, 37, 40 years doing. At no minimum wage. There were individuals that were in the mines that were 12 years old. Manufacturing, they were 7 years old. Montour Mining Company, Pittsburgh Steel owned this town. I've divided this book into 3 areas, and I outline whatever. Early life, my competitive life as an athlete, and then my business career. And so this is early life. And on that left photo, that's Brother Mike, my twin brother Bob, Brother Ed in the middle, myself. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. That's me on the left. I even get confused. We're identical twins. And he's on the right and Sister Mary. There's only 3 of us left. The brother Ed in the middle and Michael in the end I lost last year and a half, 2 years, both of them, 86 and 88 years old. Both of them joined the Army to get out of town, basically. My mother signed the papers so my other brother Ed could join, and that's him on the right with us. That is me on the left side, and my brother Bob on the right. And literally, my brother Ed would send money home to help support the family. And we'd get a variety of food through the government programs, surplus foods, flour, cheese, and it was about every other week or every 2 weeks. I don't ever remember being poor in my mind or wanting for anything. She always kept us clothed, and this is a woman that had her husband, my dad, I never knew him. We were literally 2.5 years old. He committed suicide, left my mom with 6 kids. So this is a lady with 6th grade education that was able to raise us, and we didn't want for anything. She ruled with a hard hand, let's put it that way. And incredible lady. I dedicate the book to her. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't realize what she did and how she did it amazes me. She moved from this small town to about 6 miles away, and it's called Cannonsburg. And some of you may remember some of the individuals I'm going to mention. It's the hometown of Perry Como, Bobby Vinton. It's about 8,000 people. It's up to 10,000 today. Very ethnic. I mean, there's an Italian part of town, even at that size, a Greek part of town. And daycare for my mom was giving us $1 a day, and we'd go to the town pool and spend all day there. We felt like we were kings. And you can tell from swim attire, I don't know what we were wearing, but those belts did their job of holding them up. And like I said, my mom dressed us. We were identical in every sense of the imagination. And this is probably the photo that we look the most identical in. And that would be Bob on the left and me on the right. Now, as a young kid, we had games in the backyard. You're thinking about competing, and it's a cliche. Sports was a way out. Education was a way out, actually. I had an older brother that played football, semi-pro, taught me how to snap a football, but no male influence whatsoever, no coaching, etc. But I remember in the backyard we'd do a variety of events. We found a bowling ball and we would throw that. So we had kind of our own Olympic Games. None that you would see on today's roster of events. None that you'll probably ever see on the roster of events. So this Olympic thing was a dream. And as I competed in high school, I remember one day I walked off. I looked up the world record. Now, this is before, you could look up Google and figure out what the world record was. Somehow I found it. And I walked it off, and I thought, how can anybody throw this far? I walked off. The world record was 282 feet at the time. And in hindsight, I should have walked off 300 feet. I ended up throwing 283 feet, 2 inches as a best. So that dream was there, and it was spurred by a movie, Jim Thorpe, All-American, if you remember it at all. And Charlton Heston? No, it wasn't Charlton Heston. Who played Thorpe? Somebody help me?
It was Tarzan.
No.
Johnny White.
No, it wasn't Johnny Weissmuller. It was Burt Lancaster. He played Jim Thorpe, and I was just inspired by this. It didn't matter that I wasn't into ethnicity. I had no idea the fact that Indian even mattered, or Native American, that even mattered. But I thought, boy, that would be a cool thing to do. And I wasn't picked to make the Olympic team. I had like the 40-something longest throw in the world. I had probably ranked 14th in the U.S. So I did finish second at 2 national championship meets to an individual you may be familiar with. He was 29 years old at the time, and I'm a 21-year-old kid, and I didn't think the age mattered, but it did. When I was 29, throwing against collegiates, maturity does matter. You can see it in today's NCAA basketball tournaments. These guys have 6, 7 years. They're going to mature, and the maturity matters. Bill Skinner, he was a javelin thrower for the University of Tennessee, about 6'7", 250 pounds, heck of a competitor. He was picked to make the Olympic team. They assumed that he would make the Olympic team. Well, he didn't, and I did. He got kicked off the Tennessee team for having a handlebar mustache. The irony of all ironies, I end up at Tennessee. A lot of people get the name confused, Bill Schmidt, Bill Skinner. I'm used to it now after living here 20 years. The irony is that I ended up at Tennessee in graduate school with a mustache. So, but the day of Olympic trials, it's a long process. You have to have a certain qualifying throw to even get to go there. And then they pick 2 days. They take the top individuals after the first day, and there's a line out there at 80 meters, which at the time, 80 meters didn't change. It's 262 feet, 6.5 inches. That's the qualifying Olympic standard. If you throw over that line, you're automatically on the next day. I had a great year. I was throwing 260, no problem. I finished, the prelims don't matter, but I qualified for the next day. The next day out, again, they didn't expect me to make the team. I ended up winning the final. On my final throw at the Olympic trials, I won it with a come from behind throw. I was in second place, but I won it. So I'm off to Munich. You're not an Olympian until after the Olympic trials. Literally, your name changes. So not your name changes, your status changes. You're the U.S. champion, but you're also U.S. Olympic trials champion. That enables you to go to the Olympics. Different sports, different disciplines have their own rules. They have their own national governing body, and they set the marks, etc. The fact that my dream was fulfilled, I'm going to the Olympics. I didn't think about how far I was going to throw, what was going to happen. It was an incredible experience. I've outlined it in the book. I won't go into details because I don't want to take up more time than I'm allotted here. But point being, on the first day of qualifying, again, same thing, you have to throw 80 meters. You throw 80 meters, you go on to the next day. Now, 1972 Olympics, if some of those of you remember, 2 American sprinters got disqualified because they were late to their race. I just got goosebumps when I said that. It was like it was yesterday. Where did 50 years go, folks? Anyway, so they were at the ABC Press Center, and they're looking at TV, and they said, well, the race is starting. I think we're supposed to be there. They thought they had the next day to compete or later time. Actually, the coach said he misread the international time versus 1,400 hours, 1,600 hours. He misread it. They missed their race. So the next day, I'm getting ready for the competition. One of the javelin throwers from the 68 Olympics, which I barely remember the 68 Olympics, and I'm in the 72s. So he said, be sure you practice early in the morning because you're going to have a qualifying round at 9 o'clock in the morning. You normally don't throw that early. You throw around 12:30, 2 o'clock. Sometimes the meet will be in the evening. You'll throw at 6:30 or 7. So I worked out throwing in the morning. So anyway, my warm-up is usually 45 minutes to an hour. You just know what it takes to get the muscles loose and get ready to get your mind ready to compete. So I thought, well, I'll get down there early. I had a little breakfast. I get down in the bowels of the Olympic Stadium, and I'm looking for transportation. I can't find it. I assumed there were vans. Coaches didn't tell us. The coach, the guy who was responsible, the coach who was responsible for the javelin came to us the first day and said, listen, I don't know anything about the javelin, but if you need anything, let me know. Now, it's a little different today. They have got some specialists that really do know what they're doing, and they critique you, and they'll help you, etc. So with that, I'm down there in the bowels, and I'm looking for something. I thought, well, there'd be a loop. Transportation to the Olympic Stadium, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. And I'm looking at I got 40 minutes. And I'm going, I better. So I thought, well, my morning run would be 4 miles. The stadium's about 3.8. I said, I can make it. So I start running out of sheer panic. I see the Olympic Tower. It's over 300 feet high, 400 feet high. I know where I'm going. I just need to get there. I get there, and you have to report in at a certain time before your event, or you're disqualified. Much like the sprinters, of course, my mind's gone. 4 years of, not more than 4 years, 8, 12 years of training to get there, and you get there and you don't get to compete. So I get to the gate, there's a perimeter around the stadium, and they had security guards there, and they're dressed in security uniforms that were, obviously they were security guards, but they had a color motif for all the uniforms of the Olympic Games. So as I got there, they stopped me, and they said, what event? And of course, the German that I knew, Speerwürfeln, which is javelin. And they said, and then I said javelin in English, and they said, they looked at the list, and they said, you're too late, you can't compete. And in a panic or sheer animal instinct or whatever, I knocked them both down and ran to the remaining about 400 yards to the stadium where the practice field was, where the javelin throwers were warming up. And that was my warm-up. And they had 36 guys who were qualified in the first, they have 2 flights. So in the first flight, my warm-up was the run to the stadium. And most of the time I competed, all the time, you never hear what's going on in the crowd. You can't hear anything. You're so focused. Most of the athletes will tell you that. And it's true. So anyway, the athletes, they said, okay, the first flight, let's go to the field. Well, you go down a tunnel. Imagine coming out of Neyland Stadium with a bit of a ramp going down, and they're all running towards this box about the size of half of this table, and they're running to the box. I couldn't figure out what they're doing. Well, in the javelin, you have a runway, and you have a certain distance that you run. Now, my run, I detailed 102 feet 1 inch back from the foul line. In other words, you can't go over that foul line. So you measure back 102 feet 1 inch. Now, I also measured back 41 feet 6.5 inches. So you run up, you throw, but you hit that mark with your left foot, and you can see it out of your peripheral vision, and then you start into your crossovers and you deliver the throw. They were at that box because those were the markers that you would use to mark your distance. Now, some guys had tapes, but you got to the point where it was so quick, you'd use lengths of the javelin. So you knew that 5 lengths would give you the whole distance, et cetera, et cetera. So I get to the box, and there's only one set of markers left, and it matches the color of the track. Now, the idea being that you want to be able to pick this optic yellow or optic green out of your eye, peripheral vision, so you can start into your, some people count steps. I'm going, I want to throw. I don't want to count anything. I just want to throw. So anyway, with that, I'm going, this is not a good day. And then I start hearing the crowd, and I hear people going, Schmidt, Schmidt. And I'm going, okay, we're in Germany, West Germany, by the way. And I'm thinking, well, that could be the beer vendor. Somebody call him the beer vendor. So anyway, I get out there. Long story short, I go ahead. First throw, I come down and I stutter step. I can't see my mark. Second throw, my teammate who's in this first flight, one of them is, I said, well, could you stand right here? He's 6'6". I can see him. He's out of the range of what the lane is. So legally, he's okay. About that time, they give you 90 seconds to get the throw off. There's a clock running. And if you don't get off in 90 seconds, that counts as a throw. You only get 3 throws, the qualifying round. So anyway, I'm in the back, I'm collecting my thoughts, and all of a sudden the official says, all those javelin throwers who have qualified, meet over here. We're leaving the stadium. So there goes my 6'6" marker off the field. And I'm going, what am I going to do? I come down and I stutter step again. Now I got to throw 262. My first throw was 245. My next throw was 248. I got 1 throw left. And I thought, well, I'll put my jacket right there. I've got a warm-up jacket. I'll just put it right there. I can see it. And they call my name. I'm back in the back. I'm warming up for what I get my mindset. Clock's running, but I wasn't even worried about it. All of a sudden, an official comes over and he drags the jacket away. I'm going, Schmidt, this is not your day. I come down there, I stutter step, and I throw 257, 10 inches. And I'm going, well, I have to throw 262. I haven't qualified. So anyway, I leave dejected. I'm going up in the stands, and you go through a tunnel. You go through you're looking through the portal of Neyland onto the field, right? And I'm looking at the next flight of 18 guys. There's the world record holder, the European champion, and 12 other guys who've thrown further than I have in my career. And about that time, there's an individual who's can barely walk, pushing a guy in a wheelchair, and it was reality. How could you be worried about how you're doing in this silly sport when these 2 guys can't even walk? So I went back to the Olympic Village, and then my teammate came back, and I said, how'd I do? Now, if 12 people don't throw over that 80-meter line, they drop back in the field and pick up to where they have 12. And then the next day, you get 3 more throws, and then they eliminate down to 8 throwers, and you get 3 more throws. The U.S. hasn't had somebody get the additional 3 throws in 20 years. Now, that night I got the guys together and I said, these 2 guys are probably the tops. They're beating us by 15, 20 feet. I'm going there, but one of us can win a medal. I'm thinking it's me. But up until the night of the Olympic final, I never thought about winning a medal. I got out there the next day, I got the markers, I threw, got in 3rd place on the 2nd throw, had another good throw, the 5th throw. And it was one of the most incredible javelin competitions, not because I was in it. It was historical in that vein, but also in the fact that the distance between 1st and 2nd was a ½ an inch. Now you're throwing the length of the football field. You're throwing almost 100 yards. The favorite, Russian, he dominated. He comes down there, he just led all throughout. The 5th throw, in other words, 2 of us Americans got 3 more throws, so we were in the top 8. The Russian was leading the whole time, so you throw, they are in order. You don't reverse the order, so he didn't get the last throw. So the West German gets into his lane, and all of a sudden the whole stadium started cascading his name across the Wooferman, Wooferman, Woof, and he's back of the lane. He starts running, and the crescendo grows and grows. When he lets go of the javelin, you could hear a pin drop. And these are 90,000 people. There's no other event going on. And that's what's the beauty and also the pressure. You're the only one out there competing. They know in an instant whether you did well or you didn't do very well. Very good. So he came down and he threw, and it was a new Olympic record, 90 meters, 48 centimeters. Russian had 1 more throw. 4 years earlier, he balked. In other words, he went up there, he had time left, he stopped his throw, came back, he won it on his last throw, doing exactly that. So at this point, I'm a spectator, although I do have 1 throw left. So anyway, he comes down there, I threw after him. He comes down there, he stops, he goes back, he throws. And this is the first Olympic Games with technology. They were able to go ahead and do a transit where they go ahead and figure out what the distance was without a tape. So they put a marker in the ground. It seems like it takes forever. They got a rotating when the number came up, and his distance was, remember the leader? 90-48, 90-46, 2nd place. So I got 1 throw left, and I'm going, I can win it on this throw. You're thinking that. I mean, how many times are you going to be there? So as in anything, when you think consciously about an effort, it normally is a disaster. And it was. It was a bad throw. I stepped over it. But the throws still count from the previous, 3 throws or 5 throws that I had. So I had 1 at 2, just shy of 280. Another one, 5th throw, shy of 280. And the 6th throw, we won't even mention what that was. But I stepped out on that. But those 2 throws counted. And the furthest one was my 2nd throw. So hysteria broke out. It was a life-changing experience, to say the least. And this is me at the Olympics and the positions you get in, and that's the Russian's on the left. He looks a little bit disappointed, somebody pointed out to me. The guy in the middle is Klaus Wolferman. The one on the left is Janis Lucis. He was actually from Riga, Latvia. And this is when they had the Soviet Socialist Union. And then years later, the Baltic states, countries broke away, but he was from Latvia. And the Latvians love him here. He came to Boston and they took care of everything. The guy's incredible. He passed away last year. Klaus is still, he's like a national hero. About 8 years ago, I went to Oktoberfest in Munich. He was a rock star. I mean, he's 65 years old at the time. He got mobbed. And who's that guy with you? Oh, that's Bill Schmidt. He's the bronze medalist. But that's me. And again, it was, like I said, it was something I hadn't thought about winning a medal or could have won a medal until the night before the final. So, and I was national champion in 1978 competing for the Knoxville Track Club. And I believe I was probably the only national champion. I won it on my last throw. Distance was very similar, just shy of 280. And the throw on the right is my best throw at 283.2. There's a reason why I've had back surgery and hip surgery, as you can tell. That's not a position that you get into. And if I get to 1/8 of that, I do Stretch Fusion. It's a spa that literally is like yoga, who someone who doesn't want to hurt through yoga, and they manipulate you and put you in positions. It's the best thing ever. And it helps my golf game, or at least the flexibility. After that, I came back to UT, and actually I was on the plane coming back from Munich, and Stan Huntsman was on the plane. And he was my first coach, international, in 1970, World University Games. And he had a conversation. He said, how would you like to come to Knoxville? I competed here in '69 at the national championships. And I said, sure. Well, had a conversation with Bob Woodruff, and anybody that knew Bob or knew of him, I loved the guy. I learned a lot from him. But when you have a conversation with him, it was like you were looking for an interpreter. And I still to this day don't know what he said. But you want to come to Knoxville? Yeah, University of Tennessee. Yes, sir, I do. So I love the guy. I absolutely loved it. And when my graduate degree, I did pursue that. And after I graduated from graduate school, I was an assistant track coach in charge of recruiting and academics for the track team. And a sheet of paper came across Stan Huntsman's desk. And at the same time, maybe 6 months before, he said, I'm not going to be able to use you as an assistant track coach. You're done with your program. You're not going to be a GA. And I'm going, what am I going to do? And I'm a firm believer in divine guidance. If I hadn't had the good Lord watching over me from birth till now, I wouldn't have accomplished anything. And so he said, well, there's going to be a World's Fair here in Knoxville. And I'm going, Knoxville? World's Fair? Sure. So I looked at it, and back then it was send in your resume. The post office box was there. And this was for director of sports. So I interviewed with Julian Forrester, who used to be over at the Tennessee Theater Arts Program. And during the fair, he came over, and there were 2 parts of the fair in the entertainment section. All the popular, and those that you would hear, the theater and the musicians and the vocalists and the talent they brought to Knoxville was second to none. Anywhere. It would rival New York. In fact, it was better in New York in a lot of ways. But there was a director of the entertainment side of it, and sports was for the first time on the agenda for the World's Fairs. So there were manager positions. Anyway, I interviewed with Julian, and he goes, well, you really don't have any experience, but you might qualify for the manager's position. Okay, well, you're going to meet with the director, go ahead. So I met with him, and he goes, I got good news and I got bad news. Good news, you're going to be the director of the World's Fair. Bad news, you don't have a budget. And we want a sporting event here at the World's Fair. We're on for 26 weeks. We want a sporting event just about every week. We ended up with 23 events in 26 weeks. No budget. We ended up having a surplus of $300,000. And they put it in fireworks. No problem with that. They had fireworks every night. And my association with Stokely Van Camp at the time, they had a big part of the fair. The folk-like area, the Stokeleys were from this area. They had a farm out in Cobb County, and Gatorade was literally, their headquarters were in Indianapolis. Stokely had a big presence at the fair. And they decided to have a Gatorade Sports Hall of Fame. So when they said sports, Schmidt, it's your responsibility. You have to go out and procure all the items of memorabilia that we're going to put on display in these 10 modules. And it was a labor of love. I mean, to try to get someone to say, I need your Heisman Trophy. I need it 3 months before the fair opens up, and about a month and a half when the fair closes. I contacted Southern California. They had 6. Notre Dame had 7. Ohio State had 3. I called Pat Sullivan at Auburn on the phone, cold call. Yeah, I'll give it to you. When do you want it? When do you need it? The guy was incredible. And he was our VIP when he got up here with his family and during the fair. But it was incredible. So all these items were showcased in what was now the technology area, and this was the Gatorade Sports Hall of Fame. I returned all the stuff, or the items, but the centerpiece of this was the Gatorade 88, the NASCAR that Bill Stokely, to his credit, he was phenomenal, well ahead of his time. He got the right drivers, he had the right car. He painted the car green and white. Green in the NASCAR circles at that time was bad luck. Nobody had a green car. He not only won Daytona, Bobby Allison won it from start to checkered flag. So there's 3.5, 4 hours on TV, Gatorade 88, Gatorade 88, Gatorade 88. It's phenomenal. And then when the fair was over, I did some interviews and whatnot, and of course, the president of Stokely at the time said at the opening of the Gatorade Sports Hall of Fame, he said, "You got Gatorade for life." So I thought, well, I'll call him in February and see what he says about a job. I went there, and at the same time, I applied for a position at the LA Olympics. Ended up going out there through a variety of interviews, and they weren't sure where they were going to use me or how they were going to use me, but they wanted me. Their words, not mine. And I kept saying, I'm in Indianapolis, I got a great job. There were only 2 flavors of Gatorade at the time. We were introducing a third, fruit punch. Gatorade was on the sidelines of the St. Louis Cardinals, and that was it. A couple pro teams used it. Sales at that time was about 83 million. So there was an opportunity there, and Bill said it as well as Mr. Rice, who was president of the grocery division and the company. He said, "We don't know what these events cost. We don't know what they're worth, but you've been in a position where you know what it takes to put them on. Plus you also know what it costs to put them on and what's a fair price." So the sponsorships would come to me and I would evaluate them, et cetera. So that was the start. But this Olympic experience, how could you not want to go work at the Olympics if you competed in the Olympics? And given my experience, I thought I could help. So longer story short, they finally called and said, "We're going to give you track and field and boxing, and we're going to make you vice president of sports." And I'm going, I'm there. But I didn't say I love that. So I go to Stokely, and this was the time when Stokely was up for sale. Everybody was making a run at Stokely, acquisition-wise. Pillsbury was involved. Stock price was at 35. It went to 50. It went to 55. It went to 60. And he said, Bob Rice goes, I said, "I'm going to take a leave of absence and I'll come back." He said, "There's no guarantee that we're going to be here when you decide to come back." I said, "Well, I really don't want to go." He goes, "Well, then don't go." Now, this guy's going to make a fortune on the acquisition, obviously. I've been there 6 months. So I went, and $55,000 a year. I picked up everything and left. Quaker Oats acquired Stokely for $72 a share. It was at the time it was viewed by the Wall Street experts as the worst acquisition in history. Gatorade was at 83 million. It grew the brand. We grew the brand when I left in '99. It was shy of 2 billion. It's at 6 billion today. It was a pretty good acquisition. The downside, the chairman that was responsible for this, he was a health nut, great guy, but he had this idea that he also wanted to do another acquisition. The acquisition was Snapple. It destroyed him. It cost us $7 a share. We paid $1.4 billion for Snapple. And it was a different configuration of not only cultures, but management and also organizational. And we ended up selling it for $300 million. Well, the CEO lost his job, chairman lost his job, as he should have. I take the job out there, they expand my role. I end up with 8 sports. We had 61 training sites. I was responsible for those and all the equipment in sports that I knew nothing about. You know that in fencing, there's 3 disciplines. Anybody know what they are?
Yep. Saber, epi, and what's the
Foil.
foil.
Yeah. I didn't know this, but I educated myself in the whole strong things. Plus, I had to get all the equipment for that. Now, it's easy to get the piste, which is the platform that they do their fencing on, because the Russians make the best. Well, we boycotted. Excuse me, we didn't boycott. I don't know where Carter is right now, but he boycotted the 80 Olympic Games. But the Russians and 17 other countries decided to payback time. They decided they were going to boycott the 84 Olympics. So I had to find other ways to get the equipment that was primarily built and in the Eastern Bloc countries. So, but it was a labor of love. They had a variety of things, and we had an exercise called venue development. You went through every venue, and you literally counted chairs, planned everything. And I remember at the Coliseum, my 2 areas were at the Coliseum, which seated 90,000 a day, twice a day, and the boxing arena, which was around 12,000 twice a day, and that was in Expo Park, Olympic Park area, that was accounted for about 250,000 people a day. So I had a room at the Hilton, and that was my area. I mean, I could go, we had managers that took care of it, but I remember talking with the commissioners. We had a commissioner of each sport, and then when the time came, all the operation of that venue and the sport would be turned over. I'm walking through the tour, through this venue development process, and the commissioner's saying, well, this is what the athletes are going to do. They're going to come after they compete. They're going to go through the stands and up through the area. I'm going, whoa, whoa, time out. I'm thinking back about that embarrassing moment I had, bad competition. The last thing you want to see is your fellow athletes, right? Common sense? It's not common to a lot of people. I said, no athlete wants to walk a shame through your own group to get out of the stadium. I said, wait a minute. They had the 32 Olympics here. Where did they get out of the stadium then? They said, well, they came in through that tunnel right over there. So let's go look at the tunnel. Well, you can't. There's telephone wires, cables, TV. The Raiders played there, the LA Raiders at the time. They said, there's a block up a wall. I said, let's go look. We walked through there, and I said, well, that's going to cost money. I said, how much? $50,000. We're going to take this wall down, and that's the way the athletes exited. So they exited that field. Again, it was just, knowing what to do at the time. And while I was at the games, Quaker was acquired. They came out and said, we want you back. And I said, my intentions were to always come back. So Gatorade was incredible. Still is. I don't understand the G. I know what they did in the focus group to get to the G logo, but sometimes it looks like Georgia. Sometimes it looks like Georgetown. But the only certainty in life is change. So the sweat equity that I have in the brand, I kind of back up, catch my breath, and don't say anything. Early on, before we had any kind of budget, literally it was my reputation and my goal was to go ahead and build, because I couldn't write a check. So it was, you'd make promises, your word was your bond, and at some point we're going to be able to do some things, and they bet on that. 1988, I saw this young kid in the slam dunk competition, which we sponsored, and I stood by him and I looked up and I'm going, he had a smile that was incredible, still does, and I'm going, this wasn't rocket science, this guy's, and again, 3 years later, I'm at Lake Como negotiating a contract to get Michael to endorse Gatorade. Same thing with Dale. Dale Earnhardt was an icon. NASCAR had no idea the reach that he had until he passed away. He became a really good friend. One funny story, my first time I'm down there, and I grew up being shy and avoiding the crowd and staying below the radar. But in all these positions, you have to be right out front, and it's not bolstering, it's just how do you build the relationships? How do you work of a room? How do you work a room of 12 people? How do you work a room of 1,200 people? Knowing names, recalling them, and building relationships. So I'm down there at Daytona. We've got an involvement with Gatorade, with NASCAR, and I present watches to the individuals that won the Gatorade Twin 125s. Now, they weren't the Twin 125s. When I went down there, it was the 7-Eleven races. the convenience store that they still have in Arizona, and I don't think there's any here in this part of the country, but I built a relationship with the vice president of marketing for not only NASCAR, but vice president of marketing for the Daytona Speedway. And I'd walk with him, he'd go, we're going to go ahead and build 4 more suites up there. And I'm going, I'll take one. Well, I haven't priced them yet. I said, I don't care. I want one. And I had the flexibility from senior management that gave me the opportunity to do that. You can't do that today. You got to go back and get approval. But I had approval up to about $1 million. It was $1 million exactly. So one of the other times I'm there, and he said, well, 7-Eleven is not going to sponsor this event next year. I said, I'll take it. 2 races. He said, I don't know what I'm going to price them at. I said, I'll take them. Now, what backed me up was not only the senior management, but we also, they're in Florida, 25% of our total sales were in the state of Florida. I could do nothing wrong, basically, if you had the common sense to learn how to do it, but it was the relationships that got me in there. So I'm presenting at my first Daytona, not my first Daytona, but I'm going to present, we gave a Rolex to each winner of the Thursday's race, and you would present that watch on Sunday pre-race. So there's 125,000 people in the stands, and I've got my corporate down. on behalf of Gatorade, the official sports beverage of NASCAR, I'd like to go ahead and present these Rolex watches to, and beforehand, I'm going, let's see, it's Darrell Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt. So it comes to the time, and literally, Dale's the first guy, and I said, I'd like to present this Rolex watch to Darrell Earnhardt. And people started laughing. He looked at me and he started laughing. I mean Dale Earnhardt. And people got a laugh out of it, and I was embarrassed. 125,000 people. And the routine was you'd go up and talk on Motor Racing Network. They'd interview you. You'd buy time. And so this was in 48 states. So they're asking me, they're going, Eli Gold goes, hey, that was brilliant down there, how you pulled that off between Dale and Darrell. I'm going, yeah, I was thinking, first thing I thought of. Biggest mistake of my life. But stuff happens, as they say. And Dale became one of my best friends. I was there the day he died. I was in the box with Jim France, the owner. And we did a lot of things at Gatorade. And in this particular event, we were in New York, and we brought in all the 5 major trophies of all the 5 major pro sports and an athlete to match. So baseball, Reggie Jackson; football, Walter Payton; basketball, Kareem; auto racing, Bobby Allison; and who'll leave out? Baseball, Reggie Jackson, and the according trophies and whatnot. So it was, you grow into the part. There was probably never a time that I was qualified for any position that I got. Again, divine guidance, my Savior, literally. So we signed Michael in 1991. We did a 10-year deal, which was unheard of. My deals were always 3 years, because you want to go ahead and figure, from a budget standpoint, how do you factor it into what you're going to pay? And at the time, Michael was a spokesperson for Coca-Cola. And they had literally a stable of athletes. And he was just one of 20 people. So going through all this process, we're at a worldwide meeting in Lake Como. Not a bad place to have a corporate meeting, I might add. But anyway, the Italian business was managed by a very, if you looked at Hollywood, stereotypically, this is the guy you came up with. This guy was just, and he literally had an affinity for athletes. So we had none. He had 20-some athletes on the Gatorade checkbook. And his business was at $90 million, and we were over $300 million at the time. So he was paying from some of the other, we had a great caviar business. I'm sure he was pulling funds from every way to go. So in one of the meetings that came back, and he goes, they go, Schmidt, if you had one athlete to sign, who would it be? Michael Jordan, no hesitation. What do you think he'd cost? I'll call. You'll call? I go to the other room, call Michael's agent at the time. 3 years earlier, one of the brands within the Stokely part of the Quaker business wanted to use Michael's mom as a walk-on in the commercial. And Michael would just have a little cameo appearance. He'd walk across the field. So anyway, I pitched this to Michael. I can't repeat what he said, but the brand was Beanie Weenies. He still tells the story today. But based on that relationship and that introduction, 3 years later, I call him. I said, well, what about Coke? I know what he's paying him. I figure around $300,000. And it was like music to my ears when his agent said, Coke has him, his contract expires this year, and they don't have a right of first refusal. I died and gone to heaven. It was like that second day of the finals at the Olympic Games. It was like the lights went on, and this was an opportunity. And now it was a matter of finding out how to pay for him and negotiate the whole package. And literally over dinner, et cetera. And my word was straightforward from the get-go. It was going to be at least $1 million. Well, why would we pay him $1 million when Coke's only paying him $300,000? Do you want Michael as a spokesperson? It's going to take at least $1 million. Never budged from that number. So it kind of got corporate and senior management aware of what the number was going to be. Now, the assumption being that as Gatorade grew sales, they would be able to afford it. So coming back, I structured a deal. I meet with the agent. We were at the All-Star game, and I invited him to dinner. And to this point, we hadn't put numbers to years or anything like that. The key elements are What are the terms? What's the term of the contract? What's the expanse of the contract? Is it just USA? Is it worldwide? And terms, is it 3 years, 5 years? And as I said, I always thought 3 years to 5 years. With the NFL, I did a 5-year contract. Anything you saw on the sidelines, and now I pulled the page out of Coca-Cola. Back when they started and went worldwide, one of the chairman of Coca-Cola, I'll never forget, he said, we want Coca-Cola worldwide to be at arm's reach. Think about it. How do you make that happen? Well, you've got to have different distribution, different packaging, etc. And I thought, you know what? Gatorade has the right to be at every sporting event. We have a right to be there. Athletes need to be, rehydrated. And this is before the science came along to support it. Science didn't sell it, but it helped. So then it was, came up with a field of play strategy. The idea being, if they're playing a sport, Gatorade should be there. Plain and simple. And that's what I developed, and that's what we moved forward on. But all those contracts, NFL, Major League Baseball, et cetera, were done over a period of time, because I couldn't write a check. But they would roll in every other year. Every other year, it would be a different sport. So I could afford it. I'd maybe have 9 teams one year. The next year, I'd have 18. The next year, 27, 32. But they all wouldn't come into play for a year later. And then they also wouldn't expire all at the same time, which kept anybody from trying to put their product in place. They couldn't. So you kind of blocked the access and the opportunity for them to be part of what we developed. And from a standpoint of, and the last contract year I did it through 12 years, only because I was going to be leaving the company, and I knew that. They didn't know that. Actually, maybe they knew before I did. But, and it went from $300,000 a year to $1 million a year to $3 million, $5 million, $7 million, $9 million, $11 million, and it ended up at $21 million. A year after that $21 million contract expired, it went to $50 million. I wasn't there to negotiate the contract. It went to $50 million. And now Pepsi owns Gatorade as well as a number of other products. They spend over $1 billion just with the NFL from Pepsi, with all their products and all their brands.
Who came up with the Gatorade shower?
The Gatorade dunk. It was the New York Giants, and it was one of those, I heard about it. I hadn't seen it yet. So I'm sitting, I moved to Chicago. I lived in the suburbs for a while, and I traveled enough. I shouldn't even bought a house, but I did. But they said, have you seen this dunk they're doing? I said, no. So it was a divisional playoff. I'm in my den. I'm down there. I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm waiting for this. And John Madden starts doing the illustrator, and he starts circling this and circling that, and they're going to go ahead and get the cooler. He's going to move over here, and he's diagramming it and whatnot. And again, it was one of those, I've died and gone to heaven. I've been to heaven 5 times, folks. Hopefully the Lord will take me when it matters. But anyway, I'm going, I can't believe this. So a couple of weeks went by, and they said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm not going to do anything. It's spontaneous. Anything you do will taint it. No, we need to get in there. We need to talk to the Giants. We need to do this. Anybody that's worked in corporate or any job you have, when you start talking about wanting to get something done, sometimes you have to do it. If you did it the corporate way, it might take you a week. So I decided I'd go to the PR agency that we employed. I said, listen, this is what I want to do. I want to send a check to both Bill Parcells, who was the coach, and Carson, who was doing the dunking. Occasionally he would hide under a security guy's jacket just to sneak up on the coach. And Bill Parcells' wardrobe was getting depleted. So I had this guy go down to Brooks Brothers. We did a $3,000 gift certificate wrapped in a nice box, gold band around it, and I sent one to Bill, and a little tongue-in-cheek, I realize that your Coach Parcells, I realize your wardrobe is being depleted. This should help. That's all I want to do. Make him aware of it. We thank you for anything else we can do, let you know. And for Carson, I said the same thing. It looks like you need a new raincoat. You look like Inspector Clouseau out there. This should help you with your wardrobe. So, and everyone kept on, does Schmidt know what he's doing? We can't lose. So anyway, I said, at some point, somebody's going to interview Parcells. We got to have something in play. And I did that, about a week later, before the Super Bowl, they said, one of the news interviewers said, "Have you heard from Gatorade?" He goes, "Well, as a matter of fact, I did. I heard from the chairman of the board, and they sent me a gift certificate." "Well, how much was it?" "Well, it was between $25,000 and $50,000. Mission accomplished." After the Super Bowl was over and another dunk, we've got a great photo Sports Illustrated did. Harry Carson was unbelievable. So for Bill Parcells, I did a personal service contract, which normally requires attendance, show up for this, sign autographs, whatever. I did a 3-year contract for $45,000 a year. He had to do nothing. I got $40 million worth of advertising. I can afford $45,000 just to say thank you. As it turned out, it was for 3 years. And then for Harry Carson, I did a $25,000 gift one time, and then we did a poster, how to dunk poster in a cooler. So that's, and a lot of people call it a shower, and I'm not being critical about it, but it just still registers in my mind as the Gatorade dunk. And being it was the New York Giants that was in the Super Bowl, we got all kind of requests for coolers. We have our national sales meeting, and we want to dunk the chairman. I said, good. Well, they put confetti in there, not Gatorade, but all these photo ops and everything else, to the point where my NASCAR contact, Bob Weeks, he goes, "Bill, I got a great idea." I said, "Bob, what's that?" I said, "First of all, you're doing a great job down at NASCAR for us. Victory Lane looks great. There's a parade of hats. If you ever watch a NASCAR event, there's a pecking order. What hat goes on first, what hat goes on second, and we're third or fourth, depending on how much money you spend, basically." So Bob goes, "I got a great idea." And he said, "You know, we thought about dunking some of the drivers." He said, "I'd like to put the Gatorade logos upside down. So when they turn and dunk him, the logos will be right side up and you'll be able to read it better." I said, "No, Bob, that would look contrived and we don't want to do that. This is spontaneous. We want to just celebrate." And it's become that, a celebration of victory in history. So it's all worked out. MJ was incredible, one of the greatest. I mean, you couldn't deck out anybody if you had to draw up Michael, I want you to wear this towel, I want you to hold the cup this way, and it was all him. But we had a personal relationship. I didn't want anything from him. We ended up doing a 10-year deal. It was $1 million a year. Well, it averaged $1.4 million, but we knew we could afford it, so it was like a bell curve. $1 million, $1.4 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, $2.5 million, and then, because think about it, would he be playing basketball in 10 years? He could die. Or if you heard some of the stories, gambling may do him in. But so there were some risks that both parties had to take. And we decided on a 10-year deal. It was 1.4 a year average over the term. And his agent, in the next 90 days, took that template out and sold 10 other sponsors on 10-year deals, and they paid $5 million a year. So they're $50 million. I mean, 10 sponsors, $500 million in 9 months. Michael did extremely well. So did the agent, given the fact that he gets 20+% of whatever the number is. So, but MJ's great. I haven't talked to him in a while. He is. I never wanted anything from him, and he always respected me. I was the guy there with the razor when he showed up for film a commercial, and he had a goatee. I said, "MJ, it's got to go." So no complaints, and incredible to work with. I later left Gatorade. Like I say, we grew it to almost $2 billion when I left, and I was on the board of directors for Oakley, the eyeglass apparel company. And we came back from a meeting. It sounds familiar. Came back from a meeting, and I just vaguely noticed that the current CEO wasn't there. And the chairman, who's a little different, said, "How would you like to run this company?" And I'm thinking, well, why would I want to do that? I got a great job at Gatorade. Meanwhile, I know I'm under review, and a new chairman came in for Quaker Oats, so I knew my time was limited. I was too visible. This guy was 6'7", and I had a guy on my staff who was 6'9", and this is the kind of guy he was. If Scott played basketball at Notre Dame, and he's from Florida. Every time the chairman was around, he made sure he was in a higher step than. So he was taller than Scott. But that's his ego. He came from Procter & Gamble. He made a lot of money selling Gatorade to Pepsi. But I knew that he would eliminate the upper level, and then a person on my level, there was a vice president of marketing and a vice president of sports marketing worldwide, that was me. And I said, what's going to happen is he's going to come in, he's going to finish this, remove this level. It was textbook management. Move that level, and I said, he's going to make you president of the brand. She said, well, what do you do? And that was a flippant comment. I said, I'm going to quit. And I have no problem working. Sue was great, and this, that, and the other. But within the next year, I did 5 more contracts, saved the company over $250 million, and my review was less than expected. I knew the writing was on the wall, as in most cases, both corporations. New chairman comes in, you're out. You're out. So I parlayed at the time this board opportunity to the CEO at the same time I was leaving and attached it to a bonus and whatnot, but I was only there 6 months. It was a little different. They had no project engineers, no project managers, and on my first trip to Sunglass Hut in Miami, I'm going, wait a minute, 35% of our business is through Sunglass Hut. When was the last time you contacted Sun? We never call on Sun. That guy's an SOB. We don't even go down there to visit him. I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. Relationships. I jumped on the plane the next 2 days. I called John. I said, John, I'm coming down. He said, great, looking forward to you. He said, we were going to pull all the sunglasses that Oakley had in our stores until we heard you were going to be the CEO. We thought if anybody could change it, it would be you. But I was operating with some handcuffs on, figuratively speaking, where this chairman was a little bizarre. We opened it up. We had a budget for an Oakley store, and it was budgeted at $600,000. It was $1.2 million. When we opened it, he showed up in a black trench coat, a gas mask, and a bullhorn. I'm going, my days are numbered here. So it was about 6 months. But I had 2 companies paying me not to work. What a country. So, and this is my brother today. He lives in Lexington, Kentucky. He's a diehard Kentucky fan. I don't hold that against him too much, but so I just want to thank you. And the last thing I want to say is that, and this is something that I firmly believe in, and literally, if it weren't for divine guidance and Jesus Christ, I wouldn't have accomplished anything. But where you're born determines where you start, but it doesn't determine where you end up. And with that, I'll open it to questions if you have any.
Where did you go to school? What college?
I was a walk-on athlete at North Texas with no scholarship. All I wanted was an opportunity. I went to a junior college, made terrible grades, blah, blah, blah. I walked on and got a scholarship eventually and did okay. And then I went to graduate school here at the University of Tennessee.
So how did you find North Texas out of Pennsylvania?
I didn't.
Oh.
My high school track coach didn't know anything about the javelin. My college track coach didn't know anything about the javelin. I've never had a javelin coach. So I just watched film and whatnot. And he said, they'll take you if you walk on. I said, I'm there. Never flew on a plane, flew to Dallas, took a bus from Dallas to Denton, Texas. This 70-year-old man met me there. Next thing I know, I'm in the dorm. And I'm that damn Yankee in the South that everyone was so glad to see. And eventually got a scholarship, and I was captain of the team and All-American honors. And true to that movie, All-American, Jim Thorpe made it.
Bill, Danny Martin online asked if you could talk about the poker games in Chicago with Michael Jordan and crew.
You know, there's some things that I'll end up taking to my grave, but that's one I could probably share. And thanks, Danny. I appreciate it. Danny was a roommate of mine. He was a javelin thrower, All-American, one of the best javelin throwers Tennessee ever had. He's got his PhD, and he teaches at the University of Florida right now. Michael would play poker, and I started playing with these guys when it was $2 or $5, but Michael would play poker with his bodyguards. He had 5 guys. And if you ever saw the series, The Last Dance, they were all in it. And they were off-duty policemen. That was Michael's family. And when he brought you into the circle, which I was a part of, you were flattered. Again, I didn't want anything from him. Didn't want anything, didn't need anything. But he would start playing, and he would beat those guys. And literally, after they were busted, he'd turn around and give them more money to play poker so he could have the challenge of it all. I had a laptop. Laptops were out early that time, one of our commercial shoots, and I found out who's Michael's favorite cook, obviously, and I hired them to come in and cater. and taught him how to play solitaire on a, what seems pretty simple now, on a laptop. And then they started playing poker more, and it started to expand, and it got well outside of my level of being able to participate on any ante. So, but they were sizable betting and bets made without any question. Yes.
Tell me about the Gettysvue part. How you ended up at Gettysvue.
Well, I looked at several properties here, and I came in for a University of Florida football game, and I'm living in Southern California. I lived there 5 years, and I said, well, why not Knoxville? Talked to one of the professors over there. They started with sports management. I said, you give me an office, I'll teach in the university. So he did. So I was looking for homes, and we looked at one, and they said, we got one more to look at, and it was in Gettysvue. There were two or three in Gettysvue. Well, this one was under construction, and I walked in, and I said to the builder, I said, you're building this? Is it yours? Yeah. I'll buy it. Well, I don't know how I'm going to price it. I said, well, what's the price now? I said, I'll buy it right now. So I bought that house, and I'm on the golf course, so I enjoy it, and that's how I ended up at Gettysvue. But it seemed to float. I mean, I had a variety of names, but Southview to Gettysvue came to me quickly. A lot of people said, you misspelled Gettysburg. No. Yes. You got another question?
No.
Oh. So, yeah, and Knoxville's been great. I didn't think I'd be here this long. I had several other interviews. The individual who owned Waste Management and owned the Miami Dolphins, I got a call from, I sent out a couple letters. I don't have any problem approaching anybody. Introduce myself, this and the other. And Gatorade does help. Michael Jordan's name as a calling card does help. I don't ever mention Olympic medal. I never did. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But point being, it opens a few gates when you build, someone has some credibility with certain people that are famous, to say the least. And it does give you the opportunity. And with the owner of the Dolphins, I wrote him a letter, cold letter, got a call from one of his guys. He says, Mr. H wants to talk to you, Wayne Huizinga. I said, great. He said, well, he's flying in on his jet from Grandfather Mountain. He's got a place over there. You're going to have about 10 minutes to talk to him. I said, great, what's the time? Well, he's coming in over at the private. I said, great, when's he come in? He said, well, such and such. I get out there. On the way, I pick up some Krispy Kreme donuts. I pick up a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts and coffee. He comes down, and this plane comes in, and it's got the big old Dolphin. It's a G5. He's got a big old Dolphins logo on the tail, and everybody's going, who is that? Well, we come in, we go upstairs and meet. 10 minutes turned into 45 minutes. He goes, I want you to come down and run the Dolphins. So I want you to be the president of the club. I want you to come down and, first of all, interview my staff, our training facility at Davie, Florida, and the Miami Dolphin Stadium, and give me a report. So he said, come join me on the plane. I said, sure, absolutely. I'd never been on a G5 before in my life. It looked like a small commercial plane without any question. We had a great relationship. I did the report. I got to the Davie. His driver picked me up. He said, I'm supposed to take you anywhere you want to go. We go to Davie. I meet everybody. And I said, I'm hungry for lunch. And the driver goes, well, where do you want to go? I said, let's do drive-through, McDonald's. He goes, that's something Mr. H would do. So, but he was a great guy. And at the time, he had the guy from Texas who had somewhat of he liked hemp and other things. So he left the country. Long story short, Mr. Huizinga had his wife had some health issues, and in his portfolio, the Miami Dolphins were a rounding error. He had Waste Management, he had Blockbuster. It was incredible what he owned. Golf courses, marinas. And he said, Mr. H is selling the thing, so we're not going to be able to offer you that position. And had another opportunity with Atlanta, so I didn't expect to be here 20-some years. But I'm here for a reason, and I believe that. So glad to be here in Knoxville. Couldn't pick a better place to live.
Can you comment on the disaster that happened at the 72 Olympics and how that affected you?
Yeah, I don't mention it in the book. I think it's been said many times and played out in a variety of publications, etc. I had finished competing, and I wasn't supposed to be there, let alone win a medal. And before I comment about it, I'm looking at my medal, and I got it on, and I'm going, wait, that top is a little loose. So then I twist it, I break the metal. I take the chain that was on it snapped. So I want a bronze medal, but I can't wear it now because they don't have a chain. So they repaired it and whatnot. It wasn't until 2 days later that the Israeli compound was invaded, and the murders were there, and as well as out at the airport. And if you looked out our balcony, you could see everything take place. You're a couple hundred yards away. You could see the guys in ski masks. We're watching them on TV, and we're watching them live. And at the same time, they're watching them. Excuse me. They're watching what's going on TV, so they know what the police's next moves are and what they're going to do. But incredible tragedy. The Munich Olympics were incredible in a variety of ways: records, first-time events, technology, and a tragedy like that will never. And again, they were going to shut the Olympics down. They were going to close them. They decided to go on. You have the same decision when you have, when you have boycotts being mentioned, as you are today for next year's games in Paris. But you can't say anything about what a tragedy it was. And when you do something that big, somebody's going to use it as a forum to get whatever message they're trying to get across. And it was, whatever you did didn't matter. How well you performed didn't matter. There were lives that were lost, and that's what you remember.
On a happy note, you mentioned that you dedicated the book to your mother, and she moved with you 6 children and provided for you somehow. Did she take in laundry or?
No, the first house she bought was $3,000. And I can still remember the name of it, 333 Forest Street. The house wasn't as big as half this room. And there were 3 of us then. The other older brothers, a lot older, had already quit school. My brother and I were the first 2 to graduate from high school, let alone college or advanced degrees. And she didn't know about it. She had a 6th grade education, but she provided. But she would go from our town, she'd get on a bus every day, go to the affluent suburb of Pittsburgh, and would clean homes for $8 to $12 a day. And in hindsight, I'm going, she's giving out $1 to Bob and $1 to me every day. Percentage of what she was taking home. So, and everybody knew her in town. That's Helen P. And that P is Paremba, was her maiden name. And incredible lady. I appreciate her more and more every day. And it's just incredible to think she did what she did, and how, and then the second house she bought, was $12,000. No, excuse me, it was $6,000. It doubled, $6,000, and it was a 2-story, not much of a house. But so before she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I came back and I was in town. I go over to the house. And meanwhile, the $12,000 home was taken away by an interchange that was coming through that part of town. So they offered her, I don't know, $13,000 or $14,000. She bought a house. It was completely furnished, 2-bedroom, but not really 2 bedrooms. It was 1 bedroom and a half. I stayed there sometimes, and there was one of those bifold doors and 1 bathroom. But I came back and I smelled gas, and I looked through the window. The doors were locked, and there she is on a recliner. I'm going, oh man, she's died. She's overcome with gas. I break the door down. I go in. She's laying there, and I wake her up. So fortunately, she wasn't overcome with gas. And what she had done was she had turned the gas burners on, and it went out. So fortunately, she didn't pass away. I ripped the gas line, the stove. I disconnected it and put it out on the patio, or on the patio back porch. And I tried to negotiate. I got on electrics with the idiot lights. You can tell when the burner's on when the light's on. Pretty hard to do. And then later on, I got to do something else. I got to find her help. Got to find her care. So I built a brand new home for her, and I furnished it. And I talked to my older brother, and I said, "Here's the deal: you live here and take care of Mom. You live here free, no questions about it." Well, after about a year, she loved it. She just walked into the house and just, "This is mine? Yeah, it's yours." So But within 9 months, she was declining rather quickly. In the street naked and a few other things, behavior, and Alzheimer's is a terrible, terrible, terrible illness. And my brother lived there for 14 years, and I ended up selling him the house based on what he could afford, which wasn't much. And the kids just recently sold that house when my brother passed away and his wife passed away. So a house that I probably spent $300 and some thousand on, it wasn't the price that mattered. I furnished it, and they lived there. The daughters turned around and sold it, so the 4 daughters separated it out. So it was the house that kept on giving, so for Helen P. But no, she was, never a bad day for her. Yeah.
Sounds like a good
It does.
How long ago did she pass away?
Almost 20 years now. Yeah. She, and literally, we were raised Catholic, and church every day, and Easter, it was the little suits, the little hats, identical. I've got pictures to prove it. And she dressed us alike until we were seniors in high school. And only then I soiled one of my shirts, and I came back in and got another one, and oh, you can do laundry now? You're doing your own laundry and your own ironing. So, but it was, and then my brother Michael, like I said, we raised Catholic, but my brother Michael was abused by the priest, and the details came out a couple years ago, and I don't go to the Catholic Church anymore. And I know it is what it is, and as I say in the book, it's divine to forgive and forget. And animosity is the poison you drink and hope that the other person dies. I'm not there yet on the forgiving. The abuse was incredible. I won't go into detail. And the fact is, I'm still drinking the poison, obviously. So I don't, and hopefully I'll get through that, but it is what it is. And I still have my personal relationship with the good Lord, and He's never failed me yet. Blessed me in more ways than I've ever imagined. And I'm happy to share that with you tonight. So,
Thank you.
no, you're welcome. I've got some books up here if you haven't bought one. It's not a hard sell. But thank you again, Warren. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.